In the last section, we generated a new project. I'm now going to change into that new folder that we had called Pix. I'll start up my React server inside there, and then I'm also going to open up my code editor inside that new Pix directory. So I actually already went ahead and did that. I got my code editor right here inside the Pix folder. Now, before we start writing any code inside of here, I want to do a quick overview on how we're going to generally approach the design of our project. So I'm going to flip back over to our mockup over here. I want to talk about some of the different challenges that we're going to run into around this project and kind of the distinct phases that we're going to break this project into. And then we'll also talk about some of the different components that we're going to end up creating. So first off, what are the big challenges here? Well, I think you can kind of guess what some of the challenges are going to be based on the stuff that we want to figure out over here that I had mentioned in the last video. So the big challenges are going to be somehow getting user feedback or receiving user interactions. Anytime that a user types a new search term into that search bar at the top of our application, we need to somehow get that text and then do a search with that text. So that's basically what number 2 is as well. Once we get that search term, we need to somehow use that term to make a request to an outside API. To get our list of images, we are going to use a free public service. All we have to do is throw it a search term, and this outside free API is going to give us back a list of images that match that search term. And then finally, the last big challenge we're going to run into is taking that list of images and rendering them as a list on the screen. So essentially, same things we just discussed over here. We're going to try to tackle each one of these challenges one at a time so that you get a really good idea of how we handle search terms or how we handle user input, and then how we handle fetching data, and then how we handle dealing with lists. And the next thing I want to do is take this mockup right here and figure out how we're going to break it up into a list of different components. Remember, if we wanted to, we could build this entire application with a single component, just one component. Maybe we would call it the app component or something like that. But in general, we like to break our applications into multiple separate components, just to get a little bit more code reuse in the future if we decide to reuse some aspect of the application in some other location. All right, so to break this thing up into separate components, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a search bar component that is responsible for just showing a text input at the very top of the screen. And anytime that a user types something in there, the search bar is going to handle that typing event. We'll also have a second component called the image list. The image list will take a list of images and just render them out as a list on the screen. So pretty straightforward. We're still going to have an app component as we have before. In just about every React application you're ever going to build, you're always probably going to end up with an app component that is going to be at the very top or the most root component of your application. So our component hierarchy is going to look a little something like this. At the top is our app. The app is going to show an instance of the search bar and an instance of the image list. Now we're going to end up with a couple other components inside this application over time, but I'm not showing them on this diagram just yet because I want you to kind of naturally see why we would decide to include or create additional components. So the final application is not going to be just these 3. We're going to have a couple other as well. All right, so let's take a quick pause right here. When we come back to the next section, we're going to start creating our app, search bar, and image list components.